Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the PHLY Eagles show. You know, we ended the 4.5-hour stream discussing what was going to rise to the level of an emergency pod. Zach's got a basketball game to get to. He hasn't even put on his basketball clothes yet. He's still in the button down, but the Eagles have made a move, and he is here, ready to go. Zack Bond, ZB. We're going to hear a joke about the spelling of his name. We know that that's coming. But on the other side, there's a former day 2 pick. What does Zack Berman think about Zack Baun? How are you, Zach?
I'm okay. Nice to see you again. Yeah. So look,
Did you miss me?
Did I miss you? Sure, I missed you. Yeah. This is one of these moves where I need to talk to the Eagles to find out like what their expectation is of him. If this is the linebacker move, somewhat underwhelming. He's mostly been an edge rusher in his career, right? But he's been a key special teams player. He's played at least 79% of the special team snaps for the Saints the past 3 years. So yeah, I mean, he was an All-American at Wisconsin, fell to the 3rd round. But it really depends on, like, I don't think this is your pairing, obviously, with Nakobe Dean, you know, and so I wouldn't look at it like that. If this is depth on the edge, maybe like a versatile player who helps in special teams, yeah, that's fine, a 1-year deal. But yeah, so that's kind of the way I see it, is that this is I don't want to say it's a bad signing. It's not a move the needle move for me, but I don't think it's supposed to be a move the needle move.
Jane, I have a question for you. Everybody wants to know what do you think of the signing of Zack Baun? Good job covering your mouth when you cough. Yeah. Okay. Do you have anything to say about Zack Baun? Da. Okay. Well, there you go.
Dynamite analysis. I like
Can
that.
you say he barely plays? Can you say he barely plays?
There you go. Okay.
Right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Jane Wolf. There's the analysis that you need.
Thank you, Jane. Nice to see you.
Yeah. Good stuff from Jane.
Yeah.
Here, if we're tea leaf reading, like, first of all, it's a 1-year deal, so
Yeah.
this is a depth guy. If they had real hopes that this was going to be someone who was going to grow into a role for them, there would be optionality for it to be more than a 1-year deal. This is like the book on him coming out was that he had pass rush upside, but maybe he was going to be more of a linebacker. They didn't really, he didn't have the full body type to necessarily be an every down edge player. His career in New Orleans, just looking at the snap counts without having crushed the film, it's pretty underwhelming. He was a bit player this year, and this was by far the most he's ever played. He played about 27% of the snaps, and you break it down on True Media just on whether he was rushing the passer or playing in coverage on those passing snaps, and it's like 78% of the time, 79 or whatever it is, he was rushing the passer. So to me, yeah, this is not a linebacker. This is an edge depth player. And I think if you want to get a little bit ahead of yourself, it's a bit of an indication that they are changing what their expectation is body type wise on the edge in this defense under Vic Fangio. They need these guys who can do a little bit of both. And maybe that's part of the reason why Josh Sweat is on the market. He doesn't quite fit what they want to do. And then like Reddick is kind of a different conversation about, is he going to get what he wants? And they're sort of, this is just, this is depth for that position. And honestly, like it is kind of nice for them to finally add a veteran who can play on special teams.
Exactly. That's the way I'm looking at it. So, I think you put it in the right context there. It's not like a Brian Bremen special teams only type move, but it's not a move for a guy who is look, if this is what Nicholas Morrow was supposed to be last year, or it's a special teams guy who can contribute a bit on defense, that's fine. If he's starting games next year, that's not what you're looking for.
I think Andrew has probably hit the nail on the head here as far as our work-life balance here. Zach, he says, love an emergency pod, but you're in trouble if this guy is the threshold.
Yeah. Well, look, this was an opportune time to do an emergency pod because I just want to bring up this Brian Burns move forward.
I think we can sort of put Zack Bond to bed. Let's get to
Yep. So Brian Burns traded to the Giants for a 2nd and a 5th and signs a monster deal with the Giants. But these, for the Eagles' purposes, obviously we can get into whether they should have been players here. But the second and a fifth is not good news in my opinion, right? Because you would think that Brian Burns would go for a first. And then the market for someone like Hassan Reddick or Josh Sweat would then be a second and like a fifth, that kind of thing, right? Now, I know it's not apples to apples, right? Brian Burns is a free agent. So there's no term on now he's on the tag, but there's no term on his deal per se, right? Whereas the case with Sweat and Reddick, you would pick up that last year of his deal, give him an extension, and you can kind of, if you give him a 3-year extension, it's a 4-year deal, right? But yeah, so this is bad news for the Eagles if you were thinking that. I'll turn the floor over to you. Do you think that this affects the price for Reddick and or Sweat?
Yeah, I mean, we have to contextualize that it's the 6th pick of the second round, right? So it's number 38 overall. It's a top 40 pick. It's not that different from a late first that if like the Chiefs were trading for Hassan Reddick or something like that. But I mean, first of all, it's a loss for the Panthers given what they turned down for Brian Burns in the past. Yeah, I think you're probably right that it's not a great sign for what those guys might get, but I still would expect it to be a mid-second or late second for those guys.
Yeah, and now let me ask you this too. Let's say hypothetically, now the Eagles' second's not as valuable as the Giants' second, but hypothetically, if you could trade a second and fifth and then pay Brian Burns $30 million, or you can just sign in $30 million a year, I should say, 5 years, 150, or you can sign Bryce Huff for 17 and then have 13 million to allocate elsewhere. Well, here, this is how the numbers are. Would you rather Bryce Huff and Saquon Barkley or Brian Burns?
That's a good question.
And draft picks.
It's probably the right framing. The draft picks makes it close. Player wise, I mean, I would probably rather have Brian Burns, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
It's close. He's it's a much more of a proven commodity who you are still getting in his prime. There's more, like, it's not like they got a great deal on Huff, right?
Sure.
They're still paying a pretty good premium. So I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, it's one we can discuss more tomorrow. We'll have ample time tomorrow. But I would rather Burns, although you're giving up a second, and in the Eagles' case, I don't know about they maybe a late third, right? Maybe one of their comp pick in the third, something like that. You have to see what I'd have to look at the chart to see what the value is. But I mean, I said my top option would be Burns. I didn't know Carolina was going to move him. And I thought if he was going to be moved, I mean, I said number 22 overall, right? That's what I would have traded. So I was surprised to be a second and a fifth. Now it's different in the Giants case. You're not going to trade the 6th overall pick, but clearly this is this is a big move for the NFC East, and I don't think it's good news for the Eagles, given that you're probably hoping for a 2nd and 4th or something like that for Reddick and or Sweat.
Well, and as we've been poking fun at the Giants all day, that they do at least now have a pretty good front with Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau and now Brian Burns. Like that's a problem at least. That's
right. Yeah, that's for sure.
All right. Well, you know what, Zach, you got a game to get to. I want you to get your stretches in. I want you to, drink I want you to hydrate. We got to get Julia home to say hi to B. Yeah. Let's wrap it up. Well, there's a very good chance we'll be back tonight. So let's wrap up the Zack Baun portion of the emergency podcast evening.
Yeah, my quick analysis, because you teased it at the top. Great initials, bad spelling. Okay, great initials, bad spelling. Yeah.
I feel like there's something to do with Baun, but I haven't decided where to go with that yet. But
we got ample time to discuss that.
Ample time. Ample is a good word.
There you go.
That'll do it for this quickie that Zach and I were able to do for all of you. We will be back whenever the news happens, and if not before noon tomorrow, back at noon tomorrow. Remember, sign up to be a diehard on PHLY. Take a screenshot of that bad boy, and you're going to add 20 minutes to tomorrow's show. So that's very exciting. So for Zach and Julia, I'm Bo. We thank you for listening. We will talk to you later, and as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.